The good thing about Xcode is that there are no shenanigans or gimmicks here. In the Xcode world, once you download and get Xcode, you have already got everything you need to start developing iOS applications or practice Swift for that matter. There is no basic premium or enterprise edition version that is present generally in other platforms. You don't need to download extra libraries or SDKs from external sources or configure proxies. Everything is packaged inside the app and is ready for your consumption. Let's look at the Xcode structure itself. On the left hand side, you have the navigator. In the middle, you have the editor. On the right hand side, you have the inspector. And on the top, you have simulators and devices. To actually play and run on the different simulators that are shipped, you can definitely get more simulators, but by default, it's sent out with a bunch of simulators. We're now going to open or create a new Xcode project, and we're going to look at this structure. So we're going to do a simple app. We're going to call it Lecture 7. And we are going to use the interface using storyboards, not Swift UI for now. And the life cycle will be the app delegate. We're going to use the language as Swift, and let's go forward and hit next to go forward and create the project. And you'll see the Xcode creates everything for you out of the box. You literally don't have to do anything to get a full blown app functioning. Um, and now, as you see, the app and the structure is already put in place. And we'll go over the structure in a bit. But let's go back to our slide deck and see what the different sections mean. On the left hand side, you can see that you have the navigator. And Navigator is where you can see all the files that are visible in your project. And then the middle section is your editor, and the right hand section is your inspector. The navigation, or you can say the scope, goes from left to right, means left is the biggest scope, you can see everything. Middle, you can see what you have selected. And on the right, you can see an element which is selected in the middle. So as you can see in the left hand pane, you have the lecture 7, which is the entire project. You can expand and see everything that is present inside the project. You can see the products, you can see the app delegate, scene delegate, all the files. And now if you select a particular file in the editor, that particular file opens up. You can go forward and edit that particular file. You can go forward and then look at the inspectors, and the inspectors show content which is relevant to that particular file. Now, if we select the main storyboard, and the storyboard has different elements, like there's a view and a safe area, as you can see on the screen. You can select those individual elements to see what is going on, for example, that view or that particular safe area. Also, we talked about simulators, you can click on the target, which was lecture 7 here at the top, and you can see what all simulators are available on the device. You can actually go forward and play your code on any one of those simulators, whichever simulator you want to test against. Of course, you can test anything which is not device dependent. For example, camera functionality is not something you can test on a simulator. Now, within your app delegate, you have the main, and this is a difference from the legacy projects where you used to have main.m, and that used to specify the app delegate which is being used. Now you can use an annotation like at the red main at the top of your app delegate. You also now have scene delegates because starting with iOS 13, Apple has moved from just having a single launch screen to allowing multiple launch screens to exist. And that's why there's a scene delegate. And most of the scene specific actions like skin is going to come to foreground or going to background or going to design active has been delegated to the scene itself. Then you have the view controller, and the view controller, of course, represents a controller for the main view, which is going to be seen on the screen. So, enough talk about the application. We're going to dig them separately, but let's go forward and run the application for now. And as I run the application, you will see that it was just a play button. I went forward and it loaded the application on the screen. It didn't do much for now, but it did load the application. It's blank because, of course, Xcode doesn't know what you want to create, so it's blank. But still, it was able to create a full-blown application, and you were able to run a simulator in less than a minute. Now, inside from here, you can actually go forward and do a bunch of items, like you can decide to rotate your screen, and you can minimize your existing app. You can do Command Shift H or press the home icon, which is present at the top. Let's look at what happens when an app launch event actually occurs. In this slide, it's a simple depiction of number of activities that actually happen. We're going to keep it a bit high level for now. What's happening behind the scene is that as soon as you click on the app icon, the app launches and there's a launch screen which is displayed. Now that launch screen is a bit different than the rest of the screens that are going to occur in the app, like the main storyboard or the main screen, which has been shown for target app on the right hand side. The main difference is that launch screen is supposed to be primarily static. Now it can be an image, it can actually be a storyboard. But even if you use a storyboard, most of the apps generally tend to have icon or an image in the app, and then some text which they want to show to the user, which is not really dependent upon any framework structure. Like you really cannot have service calls happening in the main launch screen, and the reason is that the app has not initialized itself yet. And the reason why Apple does that by having a launch screen is to start giving a perception of service. Now, in a bunch of cases, your app will be in the background, and when you click on it, the app comes into the foreground, so launch screen will not be involved. But when the app is not running in the background, it's a fresh app launch, then there'll be some time will be required because your app may have other dependencies on dynamic frameworks that it needs to load in the memory. Plus, it may needs to read some content from some local DB, or maybe for the first welcome screen, like in the case of Target, it's supposed to make a service call and fetch the data and show the content. Now, all this can take some time, and the launch screen can actually help whereby giving a perception the service is actually occurring right now. Let's look at what happens during the launch event on an iPhone. So I have a bunch of shopping apps out there, and I'm going to launch Target. And again, all this goes pretty fast and depends upon how fast the processing power of your iPhone is. If you're running on iPhone 6s or 6, things will be slightly slow, so it will take a slightly longer time. This is access, so it's going to be pretty fast. The moment I click on the target launch screen, you see there's a launch screen which is shown. Then immediately you see the main screen. Now, if I put the app in the background, okay, so it's a multitask view which I went towards. The app in the background. Now, if I click on it again, the second time there's no launch screen because the app is just coming from the background. So app did enter foreground happen, but there is no need for a launch screen to be displayed. Now, again, different apps will have different speeds in the launch screen. So let's look at the event for Walmart. So I click on it, and the Walmart app also takes some time for the launch screen to actually come into picture. I click on the Sam's app, again a launch screen, and then the main content actually gets visible. Same thing is true for Best Buy and any other apps out there. Again, the main idea of launch screen is that if you just launch the screen and nothing really happens, then the user is a bit confused about what's going on, whether the app is going to respond or not respond. It's about perception of service. Make the whole app process look lightning fast. You clicked upon it and something launched. Now we can go back into the code and look at the individual elements that make all this happen. So now let's look at the files. The main info.plist file contains the launch screen storyboard name. And it says launch screen, and on the left hand side, you can see there's a launch screen storyboard that is actually present. And that's how the mapping is done from for which is the launch screen that is going to be used for a particular application. Also, the info.p list contains the main storyboard, which is going to be used. At present, we have just clicked on the launch storyboard. It's pretty much empty, and that's what we are showing here. We can see the view hierarchy inside the editor. We can see that it has a view controller, but it's mapped to UI view controller. It says doesn't map to specific view controller. UI view controller is provided by Apple in UIKit. And then it has a view which is pretty much empty. It's a class of UI view. Again, nothing something which is specific to our application. We can again toggle between the different inspectors like you're seeing at the top of the screen. We're toggling between all the inspectors which are visible, which is on the right hand screen. And like I mentioned early on, you are basically narrowing down. You selected the individual view, and now the inspectors are showing you the content relevant to the view itself. We are going to go forward and change the color here for the launch screen just so that when we run it, we can differentiate the launch screen from the main storyboard. So let's go with the pinkish color for now, and so that we know that it's actually not the main storyboard. For the main storyboard, we're going to do the same exercise. We're going to go to the view and choose a totally different color. So first from the view controller, we need to go to view, but you will see here, if I look at the inspectors, then the view controller is basically a class of view controller, not UI controller. It's a class which is written in my code base. So this is where all the action is going to take place. So I have been provided a place where I can write my actions and outlets and have my business logic. For now, I'm going to start simple and I'm going to go to my view and simply change the color. And this time I'm going to choose more kind of a purplish kind of a color. And that will differentiate it from the blue that we saw last time. And as you saw, I was choosing view controller Leon, so I was not getting this option. Now I chose view, I'm getting the right options. I go forward and choose the purple color. So I have got two storyboard, launch storyboard, main storyboard, both have different colors on them. I now go forward and hit the plus icon at the top and get a label. I'm just going to call it Hello World because it's customary to actually start with the Hello World application. So let's just call it Hello World. I will increase the font size from system 17 to some bigger number so that it's easily visible, and I'm just going to realign it more towards the center. So I'm done with the long screen, which is pretty much empty but different color. Main storyboard, which has just the label for now. And I am pretty much set. I'm gonna go and hit the play button to see what happens. I go forward and hit the play button, and I will see that I see the pink color, which is long screen, come in for a second as the app is loaded, and then I see the purple color. The lock screens basically give the perception the service is being performed faster because the moment you click on it, it's immediately on the screen, no delays, and then the application can be loaded and the processing can be done and the main screen can be displayed to the user.